Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to Sports Talk with Austin, your daily dose of sports entertainment. In today's video, me and Jackson Johnson preview and break down the 2023-2024 college football playoff edition All-State Sugar Bowl between the number 2 Washington Huskies against the number 3 Texas Longhorns as we give you our preview and predictions on this game and who will be competing on Monday, January 8th for the national championship game.
We got ourselves the 2024 edition of the Sugar Bowl between the Texas Longhorns and the Washington Huskies. My friends, that is going to be a great game. And it's going to be a shootout, too, between Quinn Ewers and Michael Penix Jr. That's going to be a tremendous QB battle. And I will tell you, though, Steve Sarkisian has a tremendous backstory. Before he was the head coach of Texas, he coached at USC, and unfortunately, his tenure at USC ended badly because he had a bad addiction to alcohol. But Coach Saban straightened that up real quick, I'm sure. But before he was the USC head coach, he did coach under Pete Carroll at one point. And he left to become the Nets head coach of Washington in 2009. Now, back in 2009, Washington was coming off a winless 0-12 season with Tyrone Willingham. They were like, we got to make this guy go. But in the third game of 2009, in Sark's first year, Washington did the unexpected, which was beat USC. That was pretty big at the time. And then we saw Sark leading Washington to 4 straight bowl games for the Nets' 4 seasons. It was tremendous, I'll tell you. It was a great one. I was shocked when he got hired by Texas, honestly, at the time. And I doubted him. I didn't think he could get it done. I was like, you fire Tom Herman, you think you're going to do better than Sark? Well, Sark proved me wrong. I mean, that first year was a disaster. But, 2022, they finished the season in the Alamo Bowl. But that third season has been a breakout. Oh, my God.
Mm-hmm.
What a tremendous breakout year. I mean, that game against Alabama, that was big right there. I mean, Quinn Ewers, he has been the key to this. He was the key right there. You want to beat Alabama? Make sure you got some good quarterback play.
In Jackson, they went 12-1. They went 12-1, and they won the Big 12, which was big time for Texas, because we had a little discussion on our recap show on Saturday nights that we do during the season, that me and you had an argument or a discussion of, is Texas truly back? Or are they truly back? And you believed in them heavily. You said, this Texas team is different. This Texas team has shown me something. You don't go into Tuscaloosa and beat Alabama by 10 points if you're just going to blow it. And I said, I don't know. No, Jackson. Texas is Texas. They're going to do Texas things. They're going to blow it eventually. And what happened? They lost Oklahoma, and then it kind of was like, okay, now Texas is starting to maybe show their colors. But what does Texas do? They keep on winning and winning. But they also have some close calls against TCU and Iowa State. But they eventually were like, pounded Texas Tech into the ground, beat up on Ollie Gordon and Oklahoma State, and won the Big 12 in their final year. And Jackson, it's been an incredible year for Texas. They're 12-1, riding high. Jackson, just talk. I know you said you didn't believe in Sarkisian. I don't think a lot of us did, because Texas fans can be impatient at times. We all know that. And we were thinking, he'll get fired if he goes 8-4 again, 9-3. He might get fired again just because of who Texas is and what their reputation is. But that never happened. And here they are, Jackson. They're playing in the Sugar Bowl with a chance to go play for the Natty. But Jackson, just talk about this for a minute. After the Alabama win, Did you ever think that Texas could reach this height, or did you think New Year's Six maybe win the Big 12? They're not quite a playoff team yet. Did you ever see Texas as a playoff team after that game?
Not in the preseason, but after they played Alabama, I was like, okay, they are a playoff team. They showed me. But after the Red River rivalry, I thought they would have a shot at revenge against Oklahoma, but they'll get their shot next year. Oklahoma, if Texas was to beat Washington, Oklahoma could say, "Yay, we beat a playoff team. We beat a national title team."
Yeah, that's very true. I will say though, Jackson, as we look down through this schedule, I will have to say though, Jackson, is it very concerning that Texas is playing close with a lot of bad teams? I mean, they almost lost to Houston. They almost lost to TCU. Iowa State gave them a fit. I mean, is that concerning at all to you, Jackson? I mean, if it's one performance, it's like, okay, maybe a bad day. But they had 2 or 3 in there. Was that concerning to you, Jackson?
Well, when you go to Ames, Iowa, because let's not forget the performance against Houston, TCU, and Iowa State, those were road environments. The road environments kind of scared them a little bit, but the home environments on like how they did against defending Big 12 champ Kansas State at the time. That was a tremendous game right then and there.
Yeah,
They fought
Jackson.
big time. But don't forget to mention that Wyoming game where it was 10-10 tie going into the fourth quarter, but then Texas rattled off 21 straight points to end the game.
Yeah, 100% agree. But Jackson, you look at a team like Kansas that a lot of people had high aspirations on, especially you. Look what they did to them after Kansas got off to such a great start. Texas whooped them into the ground. But I will say, Jackson, on that K-State game, I feel like Kansas State could have won that game, but they made some bad play calling that kind of bailed Texas out. I'm not trying to make excuses. It's a great win, like you said. But Jackson, would you have gone for it in that situation if you're Kansas State? 4th and 3, and only needing a field goal to tie in overtime? I mean, would you have done that?
I don't blame them for wanting to go for the win. I mean, I just don't. But I know you have to go for a field goal sometimes.
I mean, Jackson's one of those things we're looking back at it now as a bad call. But if they get it, not only does Texas season change, but we're also looking at Kansas State as a brilliant win for them and brilliant play call. So it's kind of double-edged sword. So maybe I could cut them some slack, but it's definitely one of those games Texas, I think, survived. They learned their lesson. Don't play with fire, or you're going to get burned, as they say, for sure. But then, Jackson, let's talk about the Big 12 championship game before we get into their statistics of the year. You know, they're playing Oklahoma State, who has the leading rusher in college football in touchdowns, and Ollie Gordon, one of the best running backs in all of college sports. Jackson, just take me through what you were thinking about in that game. Were you thinking that Oklahoma State ever had a shot, or was this the best matchup Texas could have gotten on their way to the playoffs?
I think this was definitely the best matchup they could have gotten in the playoffs. Unfortunately, had Oklahoma not lost to Oklahoma State or Kansas, we would have seen a Texas-Oklahoma rematch in the Big 12 title game. But Texas showing us what they could do against Oklahoma State, that was basically a playoff clincher right there. That basically clinched that spot.
100% true. And Jackson, I know we love those statistics, so break down the statistics for us, shall you? Shall you, good buddy? Take us through what Texas has done on offense and defense and highlight some of their big time key playmakers.
Well, they're 19th in the nation in passing yards per game. They are 24th in rushing yards per game, tied 16th in points per game, and 13th in points allowed per game. So that defense can step up when they need to. They are tied third in the red zone defense. But we see the red zone offense needs to really get better. I believe it's tied 89th in the nation. That's bad right there. It's up there with Kentucky, Nevada, and UTEP. So they have to get better in the red zone against Washington. So that's what they got to do. But unfortunately, they don't seem to be as disciplined as like Michigan in the penalties per game. So that is something they're going to have to get better at. They are tied 98th in penalties per game. That's going to be a killer right there, especially against Washington. But we'll get to Washington here in a little bit. I don't think they should be bragging either.
But yeah, those are some interesting statistics, Jackson. And I'm glad you brought up Washington. Washington, their opponent in the All-State Sugar Bowl, undefeated, 13-0, the Pac-12 champions. And may I add, Jackson, they are the last ever Pac-12 champions. No other team in Pac-12 history can ever say that, can ever take that away from Washington. And Kalen DeBoer won Coach of the Year. Congratulations to Coach Boer on a fantastic season and most certainly deserve it. And congratulations to Michael Penix on finishing second in the Heisman voting. Well deserved, and go Huskies to all the Husky fans out there watching. What a fantastic season. But Jackson, we do have to mention, I know you like to mention this a lot, their non-con schedule was not that good either. And Jackson, I know we have conversations about this a lot, but Jackson, take us through what you thought of their non-con schedule.
Oh, at the time, I did not like, the Michigan State game because, Michigan State got worse. Boise State, they were not the team that Washington scheduled years and years ago. However, Boise State did win the Mountain West. So I will say that win looks better for Washington. And the fact that Washington beat them 56-19, that looks tremendous right there. At the time, I didn't think Boise State could win the Mountain West. I didn't think they were going to come back and suddenly come out of nowhere with an interim head coach, but they did. I see that defense allowed 32 points against Cal. That was a bad look right there. And a little while ago, you mentioned something about Texas close calls. But let's not forget the Washington close calls. Good grief. The win against Arizona, nobody thought Arizona would be the magnificent 9-win team that they are now on September 30th. They didn't watch Washington, Arizona thinking, oh, Arizona can rattle off 6 straight wins. Nobody did. They looked terrible against Arizona State with a 15-7 victory. But they had a great game against the Oregon Donald Ducks, against Bo Nix. And I will say some of the play calling by Oregon, in a way, kind of helped out Washington.
Yeah, Jackson, as you're going along here, I'm kind of seeing a lot of similarities in Texas and Washington as they go through the season. Plenty of close calls and some questionable play calling by other teams. It's almost, Jackson, like they're paralleling one another. Because, Jackson, the Arizona State game, let's not forget, was at home. And that, Jackson, if you're playing a team like Arizona State 15-7, and you're only winning 15-7 at home, that makes you question a lot of things, right? I mean, at least
Oh,
if you look at Alabama, the 17-3 victory over South Florida, at least they could say that was on the road. At least Bama fans and Bama could say that we went at South Florida. At least we could say that was on the road. It happens. But Washington had a close call at home. If Oregon hadn't made those few bad decisions, who knows? And then you look through Jackson. I mean, they beat USC 52-42. And I don't know if that says more about USC's bad defense or Washington's explosive offense, but they also gave up 42 as well. So what does that say about their defense?
true.
And then you got Utah, which that was a dogfight. And then Oregon State in the rain. And then the Apple Cup, Washington State was playing for bowl eligibility, and Washington went down, drive the field, kicked the game-winning field goal. Roman Odunze, great player, could have won the Biletnikoff, great wide receiver, made a fantastic 4th-and-1 conversion. And then the rematch that everyone thought Oregon was going to win, Washington was like, not so fast. So they've had a pretty interesting season, to say the least, Jackson. But that USC game, Jackson, is it concerning that they gave up 42 points to USC, even with Caleb Williams?
Well, I mean, both their defenses were terrible. Unfortunately, Washington has not had a good defense. You know, it's going to be their undoing if they lose at any point in the playoffs. I mean, the red zone defense I see is tied 71st. You can't be having those kind of stats. And points allowed per game are 50th in the nation. So that was not good. That USC game, I mean, it was a shootout between Caleb Williams and Michael Penix. So it didn't surprise me a bit that it was a shootout.
Yeah, and then, Jackson, does it surprise you at all that the Utah game was as close as it was, even without Cam Rising? Or do you think Utah is just that good of a team that maybe a lot of people underestimate their skills to keep it close?
I think people underestimated Utah big time. Because it's like people forget that Utah's the 2-time conference champs at the time. They were the defending conference champs of the Pac-12. So they're a tough cookie. That's not a team whose bad side I want to be on. But Washington was able to pull it out. But then you got Oregon State. They almost lost that one, but they didn't. But Washington State put quite a scare onto the Huskies in the 2023 edition of the Apple Cup. So, I mean, that was pretty big there. Then you look at the Pac-12 title game. Tremendous game right there. It was a tremendous game between Bo Nix and Michael Penix. So, we saw Penix and Bo Nix just going at it. And we saw Dylan Johnson making some plays. We saw
Jackson.
And Rome Dungy. Let's not forget about that.
Yeah, Jackson, that Washington running game really took over late and won them this game big time. And that's going to be one of the keys for Washington. Can they take over the game in the trenches against Texas? But you look at their statistics, they are number 1 in pass yards per game. Number 1. So Texas' secondary is going to have to deal with that passing offense. But Jackson, they're 100 in rushing yards per game. So Texas, who we're talking about, they are very good in the trenches, are definitely going to try to slow down the run, especially since Washington is 100th, almost not very good. But they do show sparks of a great running game. But Jackson, if you want to take away the rest of the statistics, go for it. I thought I'd just point those two out because they're very interesting to look at.
Well, Texas will have to step up in the passing game on defense. I mean, they are 94th in passing yards allowed per game. That's a bad look right there. I mean, people want to talk about Washington's defense. Shoot, that passing defense needs to step it up. So far, I'm not seeing it for Texas. I just don't see how they can get it done.
Yeah. And Washington is 10th in points per game. They're top 10 in the nation. So Texas, they may be in a race, as we like to call it, a shootout. So they better be prepared to bring their offense as well. Well, and they are
True.
50, and it's one of those things, Jackson. If Washington could get to 30, it may be lights out for the Horns. But go ahead.
Well, the scoring defense, Texas is 13th in points allowed per game, as we know. But Washington is not very good, unfortunately, on the defense. They'll have to really step it up against Texas.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I'm ready to make my prediction, Jackson. If you are, I think I have my winner and my keys to this game. I'll start us out. I think one of the biggest keys is, can Washington test the Texas secondary? Michael Penix, can they test secondary? Can Texas get to Michael Penix, put some pressure on him, and can Texas slow down the running game and not let it get going in spurts? And Quentin Ewers, if he's on and healthy, Texas passing game could be one of the most dangerous things out there, especially with Xavier Worthy and Mitchell Adon from the former Georgia transfer. And Texas running game will be without Jonathan Brooks. That'll be a big hit. But Texas, they're also going to establish a ground game to force the Huskies to think a little bit on defense. But those are some of my keys to this game. But Jackson, I know you're going to like this prediction because I've got a Texas 35-32 victory over the Huskies, and it's going to be Alabama and Texas, the rematch. And Jackson's smiling because he hopes that my prediction will come true, just so he can see his Tide get the revenge and win it. But the question is, does Jackson think that's going to happen? Take it away, my friend.
I'm afraid it won't, unfortunately. I'm afraid I'm going to be disappointed on this. I think it's going to be a Washington 38-35 victory. We're going to have quite an amazing shootout between Quinn Ewers and Michael Penix.
And for more great content here at Sports Talk with Austin, please make sure you like, subscribe, comment, hit the notification bell so you never miss another video on anything college football, college basketball, and the NBA. Hey, here at Sports Talk with Austin, it's Cardinals for life, baby. I'm out. Stay in.